We're live, buddy.
All right. Hello, everyone. Good afternoon. Thanks for joining us today. We were having a little technical difficulties up in Phoenix. John was supposed to be joined by Paula Boyven from the Arizona Republic, but instead I have the 12th hour or 11th hour replacement, and I'm going to sit in here and have some fun with John. So I know it looks like we are in the same spot, two Daily Stars in the back. We are in different parts of the newsroom right now. So, John, first of all, thanks for holding up your end of the bargain, and we do have a bunch of questions here.
That's good. At least we have something.
So, hey, but first, John, I want to ask you about Marion Grice and Kadeem Carey. We were last Saturday at the Oregon game. We were talking about that. Grice, obviously, a stud running back for Arizona State with all kinds of touchdowns this year, and Kadeem on his way to probably be a consensus first-team All-American. We were really looking forward to this matchup, and now it's sounding like Grice is doubtful. How bummed are you that we're not going to be able to see that matchup now, and how does that change things on Saturday, you think?
College football these days has gone so away from those like one-on-one star-studded matchups that when you get one, you're excited for it and you anticipate it. And what disappoints me is that they're such contrasting styles. I don't think you can really call them similar in many ways as running backs. And so rarely are you able to see two guys who are at the top of their game, but so different. And so, it's disappointing. I think it plays in Arizona's favor for sure. But, I do think Grice is a stud. He's no Carey, though. That's the best way to put it.
Yeah, I totally agree. I think it could have a big impact because both of their backups have had issues with different things. DeAndre Lewis has put the ball on the ground a couple times, and I think they're concerned about that. And when you start to do that, that creeps into your head. That could be an issue, and DJ Foster just kind of hasn't had the year that they thought. And then when Grice is out, I think the Arizona defense now can kind of pin their ears back a little bit and come after Taylor Kelly, just the same way that teams would do that if Carey was out. They'd come after Danker. So certainly, like you said, I think it plays into Arizona's favor, and will be really interesting if he doesn't play. A couple of questions here that we'll get to. From Maddie. Maddie asks, do you believe that the Wildcats may come out too cocky after the big win over Oregon, and could that work in ASU's favor? John, you want to take that first?
That's a good question. That's a really good question. I am of the belief that any kind of confidence on a football field translates well. I think the only time you have an issue is if you're worrying and if you're nervous. That trickles down all the way to play calling. We saw that happen to UCLA against Arizona State last week when they're down. They're down to three true freshman offensive linemen on the line. They're down to a sophomore and a redshirt junior. And so you're looking at an offensive coordinator, Noel Mazzoni, who Arizona State fans know well, who really kind of just, pulled the punches. I don't know what you want to call it. Just definitely called off the dogs. And I think especially that hurt them on that last drive when UCLA had a chance to win. Arizona, I don't think that's an issue. I think they realized that last week they were lucky, but they were good enough to make themselves lucky. And what that means is they put themselves in the position to win. And, they got some favor, but they put themselves in that position. They're going to need that against Arizona State. Arizona State's a more veteran team. That defense is fantastic. Arizona's offensive line is good but not great. And so I think you're worried that do they have the magic 2 weeks in a row? Because it took a little magic to beat Oregon, especially in that fashion.
No, I totally agree. I don't think they're going to be cocky. I don't think they're going to be overconfident. Now, is it tough to beat two top 15 teams in 2 weeks for any team in America? Yeah, I think that would be a tough task for Alabama. So now you're asking Arizona to do it and go on the road. It's going to be tough. But any other game, maybe the focus wouldn't have been there this week. But I don't think Arizona guys have any problem getting up for ASU. And this is as big as Oregon was. This game is bigger. I mean, this game is absolutely bigger to these guys, and this is the game they look forward to all year. So, I think it's going to be a good, close game throughout, and I think they're going to have plenty of focus. Another question that we have here from Tom Brady, of all people, joining us all the way from Massachusetts, apparently, is asking if B.J. Danker is as big of a run threat as Taylor Kelly. Why don't you go first here, John?
First and foremost, I have to say, watching BJ, it's so rare that you're, as a sports writer and as a jaded old sports writer like I am at 29, I feel like I've seen
old sports writer.
I feel like I've seen everything. you don't really get surprised that often. And the way B.J. Danker has improved game to game to game has really surprised me this year. And I think when you compare him and Kelly, I think Kelly gets the advantage just because the name's a little bigger still. I think people are still wowed by Danker every time he does something spectacular, whereas for some other quarterbacks it's kind of routine. I don't necessarily think Kelly's a better runner. What I do think Danker really has impressed me with, and especially against Oregon, is his decision-making on when to throw even when he's in the act of running. There were like 4 or 5 passes that he threw, maybe more, where he could have had 4 yards or he could have had 5 yards running, but he kept his eyes up, he kept looking at the game, or he kept looking at the field, and he found receivers downfield, even if it was only 8 yards, that saves him from getting a hit, and it gets an extra few yards. And that little fake out, I'm going to run, but no, I throw it now, that got them. That got the Ducks at least 4 or 5 times, and I think he can do that against Arizona State.
Yeah, I think those are great points. I totally agree. The whole zone read, when you run this, you need a quarterback that you trust and who can make good decisions. And that's why they've stuck with B.J. Danker throughout the years, because he has made really good decisions all year. I mean, even in going into that Washington game, and I think they were really nervous about things. They knew that he was their guy because he would protect the football and make the right reads. And he makes the right reads on the run pass and when to take off. And like when you say, to start looking like you're going to run and then make a throw at the last second. And that totally caught Oregon off stance. Now, Taylor Kelly can also run. He can also get after it and move the chains. And he is a dual threat too. He doesn't necessarily do it in the same way that B.J. Danker does or Marcus Mariota does or Keith Price or some of these other guys who might be considered a dual threat guy. But he gets it done. So who's better? I'm not sure, but they both really help their team and can make plays with their legs. And I think it's, we don't get the Grice-Carey matchup that we wanted, but we do get the Kelly-Danker matchup, and I think that's going to be a fun one to watch.
And one of the big things about Kelly is you watch you mentioned some of the other Pac-12 quarterbacks. Marcus Mariota looks like his ankles are like slinkies. Brett Hundley looks like Cam Newton when he runs the ball. Kelly is just kind of like that generic, guy with deceptive speed that you don't really expect him to be good, and then he finds a way. I think Danker's probably faster than him. I'd assume. In a foot race, I'd probably take Danker. But Kelly, it's like, my favorite quarterback all time. I grew up cheering for the Broncos. When you watch John Elway run, it wasn't necessarily that he was a better athlete. He was, but it wasn't that he was a better athlete than most of the guys on the field. He just could find the creases, and that's what Kelly does so well. Danker, however, I think he's just fast. He hits the corner well, and one thing that's really astounding to me is how well he and Carey seem to be in sync with the option. Absolutely. When it's I'm taking it this time or I'm not taking it this time, you're going to know, and they seem to be able to really do that well together.
No question. He is fast, man. Danker is sneaky fast. Even watching him in fall camp, I remember being like, holy cow, I had no idea this guy was that fast. And then you saw him do it the first 3 games against what I call, I still like this, the alphabet soup portion of their schedule. Yeah. NAU, UTSA, UNLV. But then you wondered, can he do it, against Pac-12 teams? And he has. And he outplayed Marcus Mariota on Saturday. And Mariota's a guy who's going to be a first-round pick and was a Heisman candidate at that time. And he just straight out played him.
He did.
So if he plays like that again this week, I think that U of A could definitely pull off another win. Another good question here, John, that we'll both get into from Erie2446, kind of looking ahead. Arizona State to next year now already. We haven't played this game yet, but we want to look forward to next year. Arizona State loses a ton of people off that defense and pretty much their big impact guys when you look around. Arizona's probably going to lose Kadeem Carey and some other important parts. What do you see going forward here, kind of the future of Arizona State and Arizona next year and beyond?
Well, let's start with this. This absolutely shocked me. I wrote a story today about Todd Graham and how it's running tomorrow, but about how Todd Graham and the Arizona State defense is or let me rephrase that. Todd Graham on senior day, how much he was going to miss out of this Arizona State defense. Right. And then I looked at their rankings, their scout.com rankings. They didn't have one 4-star on defense from 2009 to 2000 current class, aside from Vontaze Burfict, who's already gone. Okay, so you're talking a collection of 3-star talent, which is good, but in the Pac-12, that's nothing really. That's a step down from Oregon, 2 steps down from Stanford, 3 steps down from UCLA, and 4 steps down from USC. We're talking 5-star talent, 4 5-star talent, 4-star talent, 3 4-star talent, and Arizona State is 3-star talent. Okay, they lose so much, but what's been made clear to me is that this, like the Oregon offense, is now becoming a system defense, and all that means is you get guys who learn. You get guys who are willing to buy in 100%. You get guys who are ready to step up and fill leadership roles. I don't care who's in there. And so the thought that, Arizona State is going to lose a ton and they're going to drop a notch in terms of national exposure and rankings. But I think Todd Graham's a really good coach, and I think he has and when people talk about systems, when they talk about the Oregon system, that's not about the plays that they run or the scheme that they run. It's about getting selfless players who buy in completely to being in the right spot at the right time, And to be honest with you, I think what bit them against Arizona, and I think what bit them, this is talking about the Ducks, what bit them against Arizona and what bit them against Stanford is not cockiness, but unfocus, Right. And I think going back to the question at hand, Arizona State, they're looking good in the future, but I think a lot of that has to do with them putting that group in place. Arizona, on the other hand, I think can take a more drastic leap as the skill players learn the Arizona offense more, because that offense has way more of a chance to be dynamic, I would say, than the Arizona State defense has of being dynamic. I think the Arizona State defense requires veterans, whereas Arizona, I think once you get that experience down, you get the receivers to know where they're supposed to be, that's going to be a really potent offense.
Yeah, I think you bring up a lot of good points there, and I'll kind of tackle the Arizona side of things, especially offensively with losing LeCarry. And I think, you bring up a really good point with the recruiting rankings, and you look back and you see these guys, and you watch Arizona this year, and their 3 biggest impact freshmen were guys that when the recruiting class came in, we didn't talk about at all. Samaje Grant, Nate Phillips, and Scooby Wright. These were 2- and 3-star guys. We were talking about Anu Solomon and Derek Babish and some of these Pierre Cormier, and these guys, Cormier and Solomon are redshirting, and Babish has been a special teams guy. And then here, so the rankings, I mean, these guys definitely know what they're doing, no question. But sometimes, guys just come in and fit into systems, like you said really well, fit into systems and do their job. I think Arizona next year has a chance to be really good. It's all going to depend on what happens at the quarterback position, though. If Anu Solomon is as good as I've kind of heard from people around the program that he is, and this year of redshirting has been as beneficial to him as they say it has, holy cow, I mean, me or you could stand out there and throw passes to some of the receivers that they're going to have with Caleb Jones and Austin Hill and Devontae Neal and Nate Phillips and Samaje Grant and David Richards. I mean, they're going to have a wealth of talent at that spot. They're going to have 4 or 5 starting offensive linemen back. And even without Kadeem, they have some good options at running back. And then defensively, I'm contradicting myself here, but they are, recruiting-wise, they're excited about some of the guys they have coming in who they think can play right away, and they don't lose a ton. I mean, they're going to have everyone other than Shaq Richardson back in the secondary. They lose Flowers and Fisher, but I think those are 2 guys that over time you can replace. Scooby Wright will keep getting better. So what I think is fun about this rivalry is if Graham and Rich stay at these jobs here for the next few years, this could be a rivalry that right now it's fierce, it's fun inside the state of Arizona, but it's one that I think could expand to kind of to get national attention. And even B.J. Danker this week was saying, and John, I mean, being a Southern California guy, he said, hey, growing up in Southern California, it was UCLA, USC, and nothing else. I knew nothing about the Territorial Cup and what this rivalry was like. And I think that could change over the next few years if these 2 coaches keep, building the way that they have in the first 2 years. So I think the fun, is probably just starting here and could be neat. Let's look over some of these questions here and find a couple more. We have a lot that are pouring in. and we really appreciate that.
People are watching this?
What's that?
People are watching this?
People are watching, John. They're watching for you.
Hey, guys, thanks for joining. I really thought it was just us two.
All right. John, maybe we could talk a little bit about, since we're on the term of recruiting, we've gotten some questions about this. The recruiting philosophies of Todd Graham and Rich Rodriguez are quite different, and we've seen since they've come in, Rich has made a huge emphasis on kind of locking down the state, whereas ASU next year only has one Arizona recruit, a kid that'll be down here on Friday playing in the state championship against South Point, Taylor Wiley. Is there a right or wrong way to approach it, or is it just you just got to find the guys that you keep talking about the system? Do you just have to find guys that fit your system? What's your take on that with the recruiting philosophies?
The most important thing to me is kind of like I equate it to poker. Okay, you win in poker not by winning the most hands, but by folding the most bad hands. Okay, you win by not losing ultimately in the long run. Okay, Arizona State has a little more to sell in terms of the town, the nightlife, excitement of being in kind of a metropolis, where Arizona's sort of more the small town. It's not a small town, but Tucson is more of a college-y kind of insulated environment. Okay, so where the most important thing, especially for Rich Rod, is cutting bait on a guy he's not going to get. When you kind of, like you kind of said, put up the fence and just try and get Arizona guys, I think what that ultimately does is it puts you in the top 2 and the top 3 a lot. And if you're in the top 2 and the top 3, you're good. Because eventually, if you keep winning, you're in the top 1 or top 2, and then if you win a little more, you're in the top 1, and it becomes the destination. And so I don't care if you go nationally or if you go locally. Okay, Jim Mora, when he got to UCLA, and I was still covering UCLA, he went after local kids and he went after the national guys, and he started making footprints all over the country. You can do that in Southern California at UCLA. Can you do that in Tucson? I don't know. I think what you really have to worry about is, to me, a guy like Brett Hundley would be a good example. If you're not in on the Brett Hundley immediately, okay, fine, see ya. Good luck with your thing. We're good. We'll divert our attention. The worst thing that can happen is when coaches, fight and scratch and claw just to be one of the 3 hats. It's not good enough. This is a game where you have to sign players. It's not about being on the dais. And so one thing like you said, one thing I like about Rich Rod is that he seems to know when to hold them. He seems to know when to fold them. Todd Graham is a little riskier in that regard. That can result in risk reward. Winning the Pac-12 South this year, maybe it bumps up. Maybe we'll start talking about 3 or 4 4-stars instead of just 1 or 2, or 8 or 9 instead of just 3 or 4. I do think it makes sense if you're Arizona State to go a little harder for national guys or higher ranked guys. But I do like what Rich Rod's doing, and I getting those 2 receivers, those 2 in-town receivers who have watched the offense, who trust him, who think he's going to turn them into stars. That stuff matters, and it will pay dividends.
Yeah, I totally agree, and I think what's interesting. I was talking to our Greg Hansen about this earlier today. If you look at some of the in-state recruits over the last few years, if you were able to quote lock down the state the way that Rich wants to do, boy, you could have formed a heck of a team. I mean, you watch Oregon last week. Their starting left tackle went to Chandler Hamilton with Tevin Hood, Tyler Johnstone. Brett Hundley would be your quarterback. Look at a guy like Devin Allen, who was the top-ranked recruit in Arizona last year out of Phoenix Brophy. He's redshirting at Oregon this year. Had he come to Arizona, Nate Phillips and Samaje Grand are good, but Devin Allen would be playing every snap for Arizona right now, and he'd be playing right away, and I think that's kind of what Rich Rodriguez is selling. Going forward, you look into next year's class, they've gotten into those top 10 guys in Arizona, but still yet the best. Kyle Allen's going to Texas A&M. Mark Andrews is going to Oklahoma. Jalen Brown's going to Oregon. The top 3 guys are still going out of state. If you can start getting those guys to stick around and, like you said, make this a destination where I want to go to Tucson, I want to play, I want in on that, it could be a big deal. And I would think that these in-state recruits right now, how are you not watching Kadeem Carey a Tucson kid who did decide to stay home because he wanted to play right away, and the impact that he's had. And even you look at, Connor Brewer, who was a 4 or 5-star guy, went to Texas. He's back at Arizona. Devontae Neal, a 5-star guy, went to Notre Dame. He's back at Arizona now. Yeah. Christian Westerman went to Auburn. He's back at ASU now. You see these kids come back. Just start here would be my pitch. Don't think you need to go out. And so it'll be interesting to see who locks down the state first, because I think there's good players to be had.
And to jump right back in real quick,
please.
When you talk about staying local, again, that doesn't mean just getting the best 20 guys from this one town. Local means the entire state, and it means dipping into Southern California when you need to. And the thing that's really interesting is, and this is something I dealt with UCLA fans for 5 years when I covered them, who just didn't want to understand that Westwood's a horrible college town. The atmosphere at the Rose Bowl is atrocious. The atmosphere at Pauley Pavilion is atrocious. And you compare that to Arizona, Oregon. It was raining, but in the second half, when it got a little brighter and people on campus started coming in and watching the game, it was electric. And I've rarely seen some fields in this conference be electric. And I think Arizona has a lot to sell in the regards of, this is a football-hungry town that wants a good football team, that wants a good football program. And if they get one, they'll come out and they'll support you. Just like Arizona State. They'll come out. They want to watch good football. And so I do think you get the local kids and you start selling them on the fact that you're going to be playing in front of fun crowds at home. I think that's a good sell.
Yeah, and I'm writing about this a little bit for Friday, but I asked Rich yesterday after practice, do you go head-to-head recruiting with ASU more than anyone? And he said no. And it may surprise you, but we probably go up against other schools more, the UCLAs and some others. And Arizona State dips into Texas. They got a couple guys from Colorado this year, whereas Rich talks endlessly about Southern California and Arizona. Those are our two bases. That's where we want to go. Even Northern California, where they got Scooby Wright out of. So it'll be interesting to see going forward kind of which philosophy wins out. A good question here from Santan Devil, and we've covered this a little bit, but we've talked about B.J. Danker's running ability. John, that front seven of ASU's is really good, really good. I mean, Rich said this week, I think all 7 of those guys could be playing on Sundays. How do you think, Kadeem's going to get his yards? I think we've all kind of learned that. We're not going to doubt him. He's going to get his 100 yards. He's going to have his big game. Is B.J. Danker going to be able to run on this ASU front seven?
Yeah, I don't think the ability to run on a front seven has to do with how good the front seven is. I think it has to do more with how good the quarterback is of recognizing it. I think what you've seen happen to Stanford a little bit is Hogan's a good quarterback. He's not that decisive at times, and so he could be playing a good defense and just get swallowed up. Okay. I think Danker is playing with a ton of confidence right now. I think they're going to get to him a few times. I mean, they'll sack him. They sacked Brett Hundley 9 times last week against UCLA. They're going to get him. But it's more about the quarterback being able to pick his battles. And I think Danker has proven to me, especially over the last handful of weeks, that he knows where, when to dive in and when not to. He knows when to give it to Kadeem, when not to, when to fake it, when not to. And I think Arizona State's going to be in their lanes, and they're going to be a stable, sound, not trying to do too much defense like you see out of young guys. But there are going to be lanes, and I think Danker can run.
Yeah, I think it's going to be fascinating to watch because while I agree with you that I don't think it's just all about the talent of the front seven, it's harder to make those good decisions when they're in on you a little quicker. And if Will Sutton is eyeing you. Exactly. If Will Sutton is getting past the offensive line and you drop back and he's in your grill, making the right decision becomes a little harder. So, but that Oregon front seven was really good, and that entire Oregon defense was. And I think that's where, and this is where I think you're getting where you were talking earlier. This is where the play calling comes in for Rich Rodriguez, and he was masterful Saturday against Oregon, in my opinion, because those little. I'm going to fake like I'm going to run, and then I'm going to throw. Those are B.J. reads, but those are also designed plays. Giving him that read. So he to me, out-coached Helfrich and those guys last week. and it's going to be a fascinating chess match to watch again this week with the play calling and getting Danker out in space and giving him some time. But to me, we're talking matchups here. That's one of the biggest matchups to watch. How can B.J. Danker handle this Arizona State defense?
Yeah.
All right, I think we're going to move on here to our last question. Believe it or not, John, I think we've made it through this thing alive, and we're going to.
I still don't believe anyone's watching this.
I bet my mom is watching. So, hi, Mom. Okay, so Gitmo Wildcat was asking about a win over in this game, and can that kind of take Arizona to the next level? How important do you think winning this game is for these coaches when you're selling your programs to recruits, to boosters, to everyone? Rich was talking about that this week, that holy cow, everyone he talks to, hey, you did a great year last year, but you lost to ASU. How important is this game when you're trying to build a program?
I think it's a lot more important to fans than it actually is. And that's not a knock on them. I get it. This is a heated rivalry. So many of Arizona State alumni end up down in Tucson. So many Arizona alumni end up in Phoenix and Tempe. And so there's going to be that kind of rivalry, and I get that. But this is not UCLA and USC in terms of a game that will dictate recruiting. Like you kind of described, they're different styles. They're going after kind of different guys sometimes. And so I think what this win could mean for Arizona is the more and more I watch the Pac-12 this year, the more and more I see it breaking down into tiers. Okay, and I think you can put Oregon, Stanford, USC in one tier. I don't know if I even put Arizona State because their recruiting is still not what those are. I put UCLA and Arizona State in a tier. I put Arizona, Washington. I got to tell you, Washington State. I like Washington State's future more than I like Oregon State's future, to be honest with you. But so I think what Arizona can do is it can hop a tier. I think a win over such a big opponent like Arizona State, where they're ranked right now, not just the fact that they're good, but they're ranked highly. So that win combined with back-to-back Oregon, Arizona State, and then bowl game, praying it's not New Mexico.
Green chilies, man. Come on.
It's the only thing there is that Chili's. And a Fuddruckers. I've been to the Fuddruckers in Albuquerque too many times. But when you think about what Arizona State can, or what Arizona can benefit from, it's being able to say, look, guys, we beat pretty much the best team in the conference. Oregon and Stanford are the two best. We beat the Pac-12 South champs. And now we're in a bowl game, and we're probably going to win that bowl game. Well, whatever, not probably. They're going to try and say that. So, yeah, we're going to win this bowl game. And then if you win those 3 games to close out a year, that is a pitch that they're a player or 2 away. And if you can pitch that you're a player or 2 away and you can reel in 1 4-star that you didn't expect and 3 or 4 more 3-stars that you didn't expect. One thing I learned about UCLA USC recruiting is that when USC was hit with sanctions, it wasn't necessarily only about who they wouldn't get, but who UCLA would get. And eventually it starts off here and then it goes there and then, and so you look at Arizona being able to knock off, to get 4 more guys and say those 4 guys were destined for UCLA, Arizona State, Oregon, and Washington. And they end up coming to Arizona. Well, that depletes all those 4 teams and pumps up Arizona. And I think that's where there is a tangible result from winning this game and then winning the bowl game. Because if they go to a bowl game and get smashed, what have you done for me lately? But being able to offer as proof a 3-game winning streak like that would be huge.
Yeah, no, I totally agree. I do think it's so much more for the fans than anything. And Rich kind of alluded to that this week. He was on his game Monday during the press conference and just had a bunch of great quotes. And he was talking about, you have guys who couldn't play dead in a Western talking crap about their team, if they get this win. And he gets so sick of hearing about it from ASU fans. And I think it has that impact more than can we get this guy, can we get that guy, because of this. But fans are a huge part about building a program, and you want to have that fan support and you want to have that fan belief. So if I don't know, if you start your first 2 years and you lose to ASU both years, do fans not pay attention as much? Do they not come out to games? Is it that important to them? I don't know. But I do think that, Arizona had a 5-star recruit out here a couple weeks ago against Washington State, and I would think that it stood out to him that the stadium, wasn't very full, and the atmosphere was lacking, and I don't know how important that is. But I do think that building that fan support is a big part of building a program. So when you talk about that aspect of winning this game, it becomes important. But I tend to agree with a lot of the things you were saying about recruiting. So so we've made it. I think we're good. I think we got a lot of great questions. So thank you very much, and enjoy our coverage all week. Have a great Thanksgiving tomorrow. We will have you covered along with Greg Hansen and my favorite photographer in the world, Mike Christie, Saturday night. So John, thanks again, and hope everyone has a great holiday.
Dan, before they go, one thing I want to make sure people are reading is we did As Told To's, where I spoke to 8 former Arizona football players, and a couple people up in Phoenix spoke to 8 Arizona State football players, and it's awesome. I got to talk to Bruce Hill and Jim Young and Bill Baker and Keith Smith and Willie Tuitama and Ray Wells, and that was awesome. I mean, I felt like it was like in The Fifth Element when they have to download the entire world's history into the girl's head. I feel like that's what happened with me with Arizona football. Weird reference. Maybe a weird reference, because I don't know if you want to picture me in the bikini thing she wore, but it was awesome to get that. It was awesome to get that information from those great players.
We had made it, and then you start talking about The Fifth Element. No, but those As Told To's have been very cool. I have been enjoying them. So John is absolutely right. Check those out. They've been in our paper every day this week, and it is neat to hear what these guys have to say about the past games. So thank you, everybody. Thanks for stopping by, and we'll see you soon.